Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to offer dana, then please do go to justthiszen.org/giving. Your support really does make a huge difference. Thank you so much.
So good to see. I know everybody says this at the start, but it always is like this absolute delight to see people coming in from all over the place and just committing to this act of sitting together. And there's something I find really moving about that. So thank you for being here. And we'll just sit together as people just are also arriving in. We'll just sit together for 10 minutes tonight. So if you'd like to find your space and your seat, let your body rest just where it is. So if we join together now in saying, and seeing if we can kind of, something about the patchwork. I was looking at the patchwork of all the pictures and how we are the vast robe. So let's say that together. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. In preparing for this talk tonight and being with you, I just came across this poem by Adrienne Rich, and it spoke to me really strongly in the kind of time that we're in. So, my heart is moved by all I cannot save. So much has been destroyed. I have to cast my lot with those who, age after age, perversely, with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world. And I was thinking that we are together casting our lot with those people who, age after age, perversely and with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world. And last week, for those of you who are here, Flint was sharing, what he is moving through and what indeed so many of us are managing as I sort of feel like we're entering into the kind of trough in the ocean, that presages a really big forthcoming storm, and it's already here. And as a rather too avid follower of the news, even from afar in the UK, I've been feeling the impacts of the, shock and awe tactics or the move fast and break things approach. And I know that for me over here, I'm seeing that from some distance, but I know for some people, it's going to be right where you are. And because there is no separation, of course, it's always right where we are. So I go back to that short poem. My heart is moved by all I cannot save. So much has been destroyed. I have to cast my lot with those who, age after age, perversely, with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world. And when I'm thinking about these things, I was also thinking about Clarissa Pinkola Estes' line, we were made for these times. Whether we feel we're made for them, we're sure in them. So there's something about how do we navigate. And one of the things that occurred to me last week when I was listening to Flint was I found myself kind of going through my own, what supports me, what has supported me in the kind of storms of my own life. And I know, when I look around at all the different people, I know everybody has a personal story of storm, of difficulty, of meeting things that feel sometimes unmeetable. And we're all humans sitting here in the midst of these choppy waves. And as Mary Oliver said of the Buddha, who we often think of as this kind of serene person, who's navigated life easily or something. She said in her poem, The Buddha's Last Instructions, no doubt he thought of everything that had happened in his difficult life. His difficult life. And here we are, all of us, navigating our own difficult lives. And marvellous and magnificent and amazing, but all of those things. So as I was listening to Flint, I was thinking about my own kind of internal menu of resource. You know, what do I know has supported me? You know, how do I find some things I can do more of that help, and how can I soften or let go of some things that maybe are less helpful? And I kind of came up with this menu, and I wanted to share them with you, not as some marvelous menu that you adopt, um, because you know, you'll all have your own beautiful, amazing menus, but more as a kind of way of sharing how I might look at my resource and navigate, and as a prompt for people to think about, how do they do this? How do you do this? What do you do? What served you in keeping upright, in keeping dignified, in keeping some humility, some grace, some humor? How do we do that? So uh, my first one that came to me was when I was a teenager. I read the now really well-known book Dune by Frank Herbert, a rather marvelous film now, two films. And it has a famous litany against fear. And for me at the time, reading it, I think it came out in something like 68, 69. And I think I was a very avid sci-fi reader, and I read it pretty much when it came out. And it offered this perspective, this window on a different possibility, because I lived with a lot of fear. My life had, you know, a degree of fear in it that I was finding slightly less helpful ways to manage. And it offered me a way forward that hadn't occurred to me before. And the litany goes, I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it is past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. Clearly, that's not what I did very often, obliterate the fear. But it gave the idea of turning towards. It gave me that idea of not being consumed just by reactivity, by paralysis or running away. It was just a very wonderful early introduction to turning towards, and not finding a different way to be with, you know, freeze and shame and difficulty. And this poem by Louise Gluck, in the UK, spring is always presaged by snowdrops, which are beautiful, small, delicate flowers, and they're so robust. You often see them with little hats of snow, you know, when it's got really cold, and it's like they are snowdrops. And her poem sort of felt for me like it went with the fear litany. Do you know what I was, how I lived? You know what despair is? Then winter should have meaning for you. I did not expect to survive, earth suppressing me. I did not expect to waken again, to feel damp earth, my body, able to respond again, remembering after so long how to open again in the cold light of earliest spring. Afraid, yes, but among you again, crying yes, risk joy in the raw wind of the new world. So there was something about that, learning to turn towards fear and recognizing that it also opens to joy. And then a dear friend said to me some time later, in the middle of feeling really overwhelmed with a very big family difficulty, she said what she leaned into was, how big can I be in response to this? And whatever this is. And it's not how big should I be? It's not what should I be capable of doing, but more like just what's the biggest I can manage here? What's my best shot under these particular circumstances in this moment with the resources I have right now? And then try and find a way to not cripple myself with all of the coulda, woulda, shouldas, to know that I did what I could, and that might not have been much. And actually everybody around me was doing that too. Everyone was doing what they could. In a recent Red Hand File letter by Nick Cave, who writes so deeply and personally about meeting adversity, one of the questioners in the letter asked him and said, could I have done more to prevent this loss? He lost a child and then he lost another child. And he said, could I have done more to prevent this loss? The answer is probably yes. Yeah, the answer is probably yes. And then he says, now Helen, let's be rid of this morbid interiority and move on. There's something about being able to sit with, I probably could have done it a little differently. I probably could have done a little more. But I did what I could. And I loved that. Could I have done more? Probably yes. And now let's move on. And also I found two words that are my friends, that I often leaned into. Yet a really dear friend of mine. Yet I don't know what to do. I don't know what to feel. I don't know what I'm meant to do yet. And there's something about the yet that allows me to find some patience with myself. And knowing that over time, if I stay loyal to myself, if I hold to my uprightness, if I try and find a place to come from there, I will reach a place of unsticking and responding. And I don't know how long that pause might be. So I don't know yet, is often my response to something. Sharon Salzberg talks about the pause, and she talks about the moment when you're on a trapeze, and you have to let go. You have to let go before you either catch the bar of the other trapeze or the catcher's hands catch you, and there's this space and this pause. And I think that it's really easy to panic. I can find it really easy to kind of want to grasp or not let go. And so there's something for me about the yet as being an allowance for being untethered and giving space to see what emerges. And one from Flint, which I also find really helpful. And it was, don't take it personally, even when it's meant. Don't take it personally, even when it's meant. And that always makes me laugh, because there's something about that that's very unhooking for me. And for me, there's something about, if life is, as I think it is, perfectly responding to everything that's unfolding, then I'm always part of something far bigger than I can ever imagine. Of course, I have my part and my responsibilities, but it really isn't a good plan to make myself the central pivot of the whole world. It's not all about me. And I remember some years ago reading about a rather provocative therapist who encouraged a client who was really burdened with an excess of self-blame to go and stand on the stairs of a subway with a big t-shirt on that said, "I'm so sorry for your difficult day." Um, and they stood there as the people kind of poured out of the subway. And they realized it wasn't all about them. You know, people were just getting on with their own lives. They hadn't made the toast burn this morning. They hadn't made the kids late for school, you know. It was like everybody is just doing their own life. And it released something about making it all about themselves. And I have this sort of feeling like we may all be going to hell in a handbasket, but we didn't make all of it. And we can respond if we find some space to do that from. And another story that's been a comfort to me, and another kind of realized there a lot of them are about kind of pausing. And that's the story of the old Chinese farmer, and I'm sure this will be familiar to so many of you. But it's been something that I've come back to again and again as we've navigated all the different things that have happened in our relatively long lives. And so the story, according to Alan Watts' version, is once upon a time. Don't you love a story that starts like that? Once upon a time, there was a Chinese farmer whose horse ran away. That evening, all of the neighbours came round to commiserate. They said, "Oh, we're so sorry to hear your horse has run away. This is most unfortunate." The farmer said, "Maybe." The next day, the horse came back, bringing 7 wild horses with it. And in the evening, everybody came back and said, "Oh, whoa, isn't that lucky? What a great turn of events. You have 8 now. You'll do great." And the farmer said, "Maybe." And the following day, his son tried to break in one of the horses, and while riding it, he was thrown and broke his leg. And the neighbours came round, "Oh no, that's just too bad." And the farmer responded, "Maybe." And the next day, the conscription officers came round to conscript people into the army, and they rejected his son because he had a broken leg. And again, all of the neighbours came round and said, "Isn't that great?" And he said, "Maybe." And there's something about this maybe, which is about not getting caught in the moment, not getting caught in the crisis, and finding a way to live in a longer timeline. So as I've said, in a way, I noticed they've all been a way to help me pause and not just fall down the rabbit hole of the next crisis. Let's be, yet, I don't know, maybe. And I've also taken a lot of succor and comfort and resource from other people's words, especially in the form of stories and poetry. And I'm inspired and nourished by seeing how other people meet this world and our shared experience of life. Mary Oliver, of course. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees and the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the world goes on. She also wrote a lot of love songs, love poems to her dog, Percy. And Percy is a wonderful teacher. So she says, her poem, "I asked Percy how I should live my life." "Love, love, love," said Percy, "and hurry as fast as you can along the shining beach or the rubble or the dust, and go to sleep. Give up your body heat, your beating heart, then trust." Love, 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 says Percy. And of course, this kind of came last because it's something we all share. So it's not last in my life, but just in how I was thinking, which is practice. Practice, practice, practice. And I've learned over time to sit somewhat steadily and uprightly. Strong back, soft front, wild heart. Those sense of how we can meet life and not be too pulled about and too forward, too backward, just noticing and the opportunity to notice craziness in my mind, my preferences, addictions, attachments, desires, delusions, needs, beliefs, joys, sorrows, delight. The endless, endless mutability of life, and to embrace and indeed cherish impermanence. And it's our sitting together, it's the triple treasure of the Dharma. And Buddha and Sangha. That's a resource all the time. And Darcy said it last week about we've learned we can just keep doing this thing together. In her beautiful piece about We Were Made for These Times, Clarissa Pinkola Estes says, ours is not the task of fixing the entire world all at once, but of stretching out to mend the part of the world that's within our reach. Any small, calm thing that one soul can do to help another soul, to assist some portion of this poor suffering world, will help immensely. It is not given to us to know which acts or by whom will cause the critical mass to tip towards an enduring good. It's not ours to know. Our task is just to sit together, to be that one calm thing, and to sit next to each other, virtual shoulder to virtual shoulder, in this space, knowing that we hold each other upright, and that vow is what keeps us in the flow. There's a poem, very short, that Flint read a couple of years ago when someone responded about one of the terrible fires, and we've had the terrible fires in the States again so recently, and it's by Izumi Shikubu, and it's, although the wind blows terribly here, the moonlight also leaks between the roof planks of this ruined house. Although the wind blows terribly here, the moonlight also leaks between the roof planks of this ruined house. And right now, the wind is blowing pretty terribly. And we're all sitting in our own versions of ruined houses, and the moonlight is leaking in. And how do we support each other and ourselves to keep looking up, to keep noticing, and to keep noticing the beautiful shadows that the moon casts as it leaks through the roof planks? And my list could go on. My beloved partner and friends and fun and cats and projects and, the whole amazing, blooming magnificence of the world, and random delight. Random delight. The very end of the Song of the Grass Roof Hermitage. The emphasis is on sitting in our flesh, in our bones, in the midst of our lives. And this is where we can be present to the mess and the miracle. Right at the end of it, it says, let go of hundreds of years and relax completely. Open your hands and walk innocent. Thousands of words, myriad interpretations, are only to free you from obstructions. If you want to know the undying person in the hut, don't separate from this skin bag, here and now. Stay in your body, stay in our body, stay in the body of the Sangha. And together we all find ways, as we all have done, throughout our long and presumably difficult lives. And like all of us, I've lived my life forward into unknowing, and only had ever a partial picture looking back. And so many things that look like disasters have not been wholly disasters, and so many outcomes that I couldn't envisage, beneficial or not. And that's also part of the pause and decenters me from being the pivot of the world. I really like this quote, orientation, from George Saunders, author of Lincoln in the Bardo. Find what makes you kinder, what opens you up and brings out the most loving and generous and unafraid version of you, and go after those things as if nothing else matters. And that kind of caught some of the things that I'd been really thinking about. And a new to me heroine, Reverend Marianne Budde, who wrote a book about courage. I think we saw courage. She says, the courage to be brave when it matters most requires a lifetime of small decisions that set us on a path of self-awareness, attentiveness, and willingness to risk failure for what we believe is right. And I believe our sitting is a way of really developing our sense of courage, the endless small decisions of turning towards, of opening, of softening, of leaning into. And then, of course, there's just knowing that there will be times, for different amounts of times, when nothing seems to work. And often for me, in those times, the only thing that I hold on to is knowing that the times when nothing seems to work will be followed by times when things do seem to work. So how do we keep meeting this life with openness, grace, humility, humour, and have confidence in love and each other and practice? And I'm really looking forward to hearing about how you're doing and for us to meet. But I did want to end with a wonderful poem by Billy Collins. It's called Despair. So much gloom and doubt in our poetry. Flowers wilting on the table, the self regarding itself in a watery mirror. Dead leaves cover the ground, the wind moans in the chimney, and the tendrils of the yew tree inch toward the coffin. I wonder what the ancient Chinese poets would make of all this, the shadows and empty cupboards. Today, with the sun blazing in the trees, my thoughts turn to the great 10th century celebrators of experience. Woohoo! Whose delight in the smallest things could hardly be restrained, and to his joyous counterpart in the western provinces. Yeehaw! So, with those two hopefully keeping us company, wahoo and yeehaw, I look forward to meeting with you.
Trudy, thank you so
Hi,
much.
Bridget.
I just want to express some deep, deep gratitude because so many things you said resonated with me. And I'm just grateful that you, even across the pond, can help us see how we can find some small steps and how to calm ourselves. I'm curious about particularly when you say, what do I know has supported me? Some of you know that I've had this situation with where my son hasn't spoken to me, and he recently called and he's going to ask for some sort of co-counseling meeting. But I find myself at a very high peak of anxiety, and I resonated particularly with the statement where you say, "What is my best shot?" You know, do not cripple yourself. So I'm curious, what are the ways that you find not to cripple yourself when you're in a particularly emotionally charged situation with a family member or a very close person?
I'm smiling because it's relatively recent. So I'm just thinking there's something for me about allowing myself to do it badly.
Okay.
Just knowing that I'm not going to intentionally do it badly. Um,
Mhm.
and to be really aware that my body will bear some of the consequence,
Mhm.
so, sick to my stomach or heavy chest or, not sleeping as well as I might. So it's kind of like knowing that that's probably going to happen. And it's okay and it's not okay way.
Mhm.
So if I expect to kind of, gird my loins and wear, do that and it's not going to work. It's almost like allowing myself I think someone asked Frank Ostaseski, how does he manage the heartbreak? And he said, I let my heart break. It's like, actually, okay, if that's what this is going to happen, I'm going to have a broken heart.
Right. Well,
And
thank you.
that's survivable. You
Right.
survived.
Right. Mhm. Thank you.
Good luck. Do it badly with magnificence. Hello, Genevieve.
Hello. Thank you for so much exquisite beauty. I'm going to go back to those poems again and again. And I love that story about the Chinese farmer too. What wisdom. And I have a kind of an encapsulated version of some of what you're talking about, because I'm a federal employee. And so the first 2 weeks of the administration, we were just clobbered with memo after memo of executive order after executive order, and each one contradicted the one before. And and at the same time, I read an article about how Affordable Care Act was going to be crippled without going to Congress, and so I was going to lose my health insurance and my job. And my office is in Manhattan, so I can't return to it. Many. So it was very interesting, because for 2 weeks I was part of a roughly 100-person agency where everyone was having panic attacks. We've gotten to a better place for us for the moment, and that's given me the opportunity to sort of see, like in a marble or in a piece of amber, that where I had 4 incapacitating panic attacks, and the whole time I was on an adrenaline drip, and I couldn't focus on reading because there's all these interrupting thoughts of like your survival, and it really made me want to meditate on how I was reactive rather than responsive, and how I believed every horrible thing was going to be the most horrible it could be as soon as imaginable, and that I wasn't going to get help. And none of those things is true.
Yeah.
And so it's my koan for the year, perhaps.
And just such great teaching, I think, Genevieve. There is that, it is shock and awe, it is break things, and act fast. And, if we reacted to every statement, we are serving that system.
Exactly.
And that's a real thing for all of us to, to be aware. Obviously, there's a powerful system running at the moment, but actually, we serve fear when we do that. We serve, not trusting that actually, there's help. People are gonna respond. It's dire. I have no doubt it's dire. I wouldn't sugarcoat anything at this point at all, but I also feel like, yeah, this is a real place of practice of finding some sturdy uprightness.
And yes, if I'm incapacitated by fear, then the fearmongers have won.
Absolutely.
And only I can allow myself or not allow myself to be incapacitated by fear. No one else gets to make that decision. And I also realized
to be held when you are to have contact and company. We don't do this on our own. We really don't.
So the 2 things I have seen, of many things, 2 things are, one is I need to set limits. We all need to set limits. I can't respond to every ping from every colleague all day long, or read every article as it comes in. And the other thing is what you were just saying, which is mostly what I wanted to say, which is we need to be here for and with each other. And there is more to that than we know. And the image came to me of a lightning bolt. And if it doesn't have somewhere to go to ground, it burns everything. But if it has somewhere to go to ground, it just goes into the earth. Yeah. And we can be each other's grounding circuits, alternating roles in this time. And and do things like sing together, where we all become one.
Yeah.
And
And
understand.
to never think you are, to not buy into the delusion you're on your own.
Mm.
This is none of this. I'm over here, but I'm with this, but and I was also thinking about the earth bank, that practice is the earth bank that holds the fire, and that's what we can keep offering each other. So, my heart goes out to you. You're in a precarious situation, and I hope that there are good things that can support you.
Well, this practice does, and you just have. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Trudy.
Hi, Chris.
Hello, everyone. I find it's a really curious, a very strong comfort to hear you express your condolences. I don't know exactly what that is, except, and there's been a part of me that's wanted you to know, in your heart what it's like here, with all the craziness, and knowing that it's everywhere too. But it's surprisingly comforting to hear that from you, and we're hearing from our relatives in Denmark, and seeing demonstrations in Germany, bigger demonstrations than we are managing here. And that is just, it's wonderful to know that we're kind of all facing this together. So one thing that happened the other night that I found was really helpful. I saw a movie called The Room Next Door with Tilda Swinton and Julianne Moore. And it's not a perfect film, I don't think, but it's quite moving. And it's about a woman who is facing the end of her life with cancer, and all the treatments have not worked. And she's decided to take matters into her own hands and take her own life. And Julianne Moore is her friend that has been enlisted kind of unwillingly to assist. So the whole film is really just seeing Tilda's face a lot of the time in a close up. This sculptured face, she must have lost a lot of weight for this, I think. Anyway, so there was one scene, and they're moving along. And there was this one scene where the friend, Julianne Moore, who really grows and develops in this during this film, from somebody who was so afraid of death to becoming more comfortable with it. Anyway, she's having lunch with somebody, a friend, who's talking about the death of the earth, the environmental crisis, and everything is shit, and we don't have much longer, and Marianne Moore said she was protesting, because he was just so down. Marianne and Julie Moore said, there are many ways to live within a tragedy. And I literally, those words almost came out in red letters to me, that we were talking about the earth, we were talking about an individual's death, and yet, Tilda Swinton, who was playing the dying woman, she was listening to the birds, and she was observing the trees, and she was observing. And I just thought, okay, there are many ways to live within a tragedy. We have choices no matter what.
Absolutely, and there's something in that, the quality of people who are often know they're dying, of deep perceptive gratitude. Of like the coffee really is amazing if you're still able to drink it, or the birds, or and I was thinking there is something about the addictive pull of the ain't it awful thing to actually, okay, yeah, it is, and your beautiful face is there, and I'm sitting here, and these connections that we've made are real.
Mhm.
You know, and my heart is breaking for the situation in America. It seems to me utterly shocking, and we're not covering it as well in the UK as we might.
Mhm.
But I really get that we're watching something massive. Some people are part of something massive, and the birds still sing. You know, meanwhile the clear pebbles of the rain fall. There's something about how do we keep doing this together. So
Mhm.
I'm going to catch that film. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Francis. I think you just muted yourself again.
They changed all
Hey,
the icons on my screen. What
I
was up
know.
here was down here, and I can't find anything.
Zoom is its own lesson in impermanence.
Especially for me. I wanted to say thank you so much for your sensitivity. I feel much better now than I did an hour ago this morning with I don't even follow the news that closely, but it's just all around us. And I do have practices, and I do have ways of coping at this age. Like you, I've had a lot of things to
Yeah.
cope with. And I remind myself that I really can't do very much right now, you know, but it feels so important that I do much. And yet, so I try to remind myself to be kind and take care of what's in front of me.
Yeah.
And send as much energy as I can. But I really appreciate your addressing that today and being sensitive to the fact that that's what many of us needed to hear.
And I really feel it genuinely is not up to us to decide how big or small what we're offering is. We really don't know the consequence of just a small act of kindness to ourselves, if not to other people. There's something about that. And
If you get too overwhelmed with what you can't do, then you don't do those small things of sensitivity and kindness to those people.
and I think, you know, I don't know if this happens for you, but you know, I know for me, like comparing mind is quite likely to take me down a, oh, look what someone else is doing, or how big that is, or you know, there's something about that that really is like, actually in this space with this resource, this is what I can offer, and my only task is to offer what I can offer. And that might be just taking really good care of your houseplants.
And your
You know,
cats.
it's like tend what's within your hands, you know, tend what's within your reach.
Well, in our generation, you know, we worked on civil rights, and we worked on the Vietnam War, and and so there's that push within a lot of us that we have to do something. And you know, really, it's time the younger people are going to have to do a lot of this.
Yeah. And
And
our job is to know that those things made a difference. Right now we might think they didn't make enough difference, but hey ho, that's the way the world goes. But there's something about those, we made the differences we could make
and still are.
and still are. And
We're here to support. Uh,
and a little bit like for me with Genève is to say, you know, despair and collapse and apathy are the friends of people who want the world to be full of fear. So joy is a rebellion, kindness is a rebellion, connection is a rebellion.
stay calm.
Stay calm and carry on.
Yeah, I'm trying.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Hi,
Hi,
Rosemary.
Trudy. Thank you so much. the first thing that I thought about was music, which from a very, very young age was my solace. And church also was a haven for me. And from young adulthood till when I began to practice here, it ceased to be. Church did. So coming to practice was kind of a homecoming. And without the music, you know, but yeah. And I think faith that what we do in our practice, that makes such a difference in the world. Helps me.
Yeah.
The other aspect is really taking myself to task for self-care, which is a challenge, to really be intentional about my time and being kind to myself and to those around me. It's really a lot. That's doing a lot.
Yes.
And
Do you sing to yourself?
sometimes I do. Actually, Rumi had this thing where, one of his poems is, when I wake up, don't think, but play something on the
Take down
violin.
your
So
instrument.
I do have a little thing which I can sing for you. It's just very short. It goes, just like that.
Beautiful.
Thank you. So little things.
Little things. Little things aren't little.
Exactly. So thank you for how you really opened up the whole question.
Thank you. I think we just have time to say hi to Joel.
I just want to express my gratitude also, Trudy. I just want to say that what I will take from this today is the reminder that you gave that remembering that I'm always part of something bigger gives me a space, a different space to respond from.
Yeah.
And you brought that today. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And you're such a important part of something bigger too. So thank you for all you offer. So we'll finish with our practice principles and to really recognize how we are all in this. We're all doing everything that we can do, and there is no big or small. They're just doing. So, caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher. Being just this moment, compassion's way. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher. Being just this moment, compassion's way. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher. Being just this moment, compassion's way. Thank you all so much for your practice and your presence.